Welcome back, everybody. Frank Vespi here from Maryland Racing Today, powered by the Racing Biz, theracingbiz.com, presented by our friends at the Maryland Jockey Club, joined as always by Mackenzie Pfeiffer, John Piassek, going to do a little news, going to do a little handicapping. We've got mandatory payouts in all wagers on Sunday at Laurel because although you might not experience it this way, it's the end of the meet. Guys, what's going on? We ready to rock and roll here with some stuff?
I've been staring at the turf course, so I'm not. Yes, it looks brighter and brighter. I think people are not amused with the pictures I've sent just of the monitor and the turf course. Looking good.
I was going to say, last weekend, it's looked nicer than it has in a long time. It was like in The Wizard of Oz when it's been in black and white for so long, and now all of a sudden it switches over to color. So, I'm still counting down the days. Assuming no hiccups, it's only 2 weeks from Friday that the first grass race of the season will take place.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed because could use the help on field size, and I'm sure the racing office could use the help getting cards closed. So we'll look forward to all that. Everybody check out Maryland Racing Today, wherever you get your podcasts, Amazon, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff. And please like and subscribe. We do appreciate it. It does help us out quite a bit. So on to the news. Last week, 2 stakes at Laurel, 3 3-year-olds and 3-year-old fillies. Next step on the road to the Preakness and Black-Eyed Susan, respectively. Let's start in the private terms for the 3-year-olds. That is a horse that, Mac, you've been talking up a little bit. That goes to Wild Warrior.
Look, I thought I was going to be completely wrong when we get into a little bit of trouble throughout the race, but this was kind of the position I figured we would find ourselves in, especially with him breaking from the outside. And he did everything right, but he really proved himself in here, really earned his Wheaties, so to speak. I think there's still room to keep going up on the buyers as well. He ran a 69 in this performance, but this is where you see him just get into a little bit of trouble. And that's when I started worrying and thinking, well, he ran a great race. I give him all the credit. Huge effort from Code of Silence, who we all kind of said, and Frank, you were really on the bandwagon with 2 turns.
I was the bandwagon.
Yes, 2 turns makes all the difference. But Wild Warrior, I was a little worried maybe he was the greenest, but I thought this was a huge effort with him rallying outside after facing that trouble. He kept on going through the lane too, so I think it's really interesting to see what we have ahead of him.
John, talking to the trainers of Wild Warrior and Let's Go Lando, that's Gary Capuano for both, and Tim Keefe, who is Code of Silence. All 3 of those likely pointed to the Tessio next month. Additionally, Close the Gate, probably coming back for the Tessio after a okay try at Colonial Downs. Of this top 3, who are you buying going longer and who are you selling?
I'm still leaning slightly towards Let's Go Lando. I thought he had a tougher trip than the pan view might indicate, because on the pan shot, it looks like he has every shot to get up the inside, and he just doesn't take advantage. But if you watch the head-on, he doesn't have quite as much room as one might expect. He tries to come through up the inside, but his stablemate Hollywood Import really keeps that hole closed until about the 8th pole. And by the time it opens up a bit more, it's too late. So I think he's a better horse than what he showed in the private terms. I'm not quite sure what to make of Code of Silence, because he made that really big move on the at the top of the stretch, and it looked like he was going to kick away, but he really didn't. Wild Warrior came back on him and won. I kind of wonder if Code of Silence is just the type of horse who likes running with others. There are some horses who really don't like running by themselves. So he will need, I think, to make a much better timed move to win the Tessio, though he will be a good horse to key underneath in anyone's exotic plays, especially yours, Frank, I imagine.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I wasn't upset with that effort at all for him. I mean, I think, I think you could make I think the 2 turns helped. I think the maturity's still an issue there. I think he's still kind of figuring out what he's doing here, but the 2 turns allowed him to be a little closer to the pace, which was helpful. He made the move on the outside. I thought Angel Cruz rode a great race. I mean, I do think all 3 of those, I mean, the winner's the winner. I think the other 2 can make the case. We might have been best here, and we might be best going 9 furlongs. So I do sort of feel like there's every reason for all of them to come back because they can all make a case.
I agree. I don't think it would take much to really give someone an edge or an advantage in that next step. So it'll be curious how they're bet if we get all 3 of them back in there as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely right. So we'll look forward to that. We'll be talking a lot more about that group of horses going forward. We'll also be talking about this group of horses. John, you were all over Miss Fulton Gal and the Beyond the Wire, which leads to the Weber City Miss. We got a lot of words in these stakes names, but here's Miss Fulton Gal, John.
Well, she ran just a tremendous race here, picking this up on the far turn. But she really never looked like a winner at all until the final strides. Here's Law School, who I was a bit skeptical of going into the race, and that skepticism was somewhat validated as she ends up flattening out to 4th. Peach Tie, who ended up was absolutely crunched at the pools, makes a big move, doesn't quite kick away the way she had. And then here's the New York shipper, Some Ride, who makes a big move from last. And at this point, it looks like she's about to win by open lengths. In fact, Dave Rodman gave kind of his chef's kiss call. Every time Dave says the odds of the horse, you know that horse has a very good chance. So right about here, he's like, Some Ride at 8-1, and you're like, well, it's over. But here comes Miss Fulton Gal in between horses, a vigorous ride from Romania, splits horses, gets up in the absolute last few strides, showing that grinding closing style that she used to win a first level allowance 2 starts back. I had said after that race that kind of style would suit her well, going a mile or longer down the road, and it did. In the Beyond the Wire. I imagine she's Weber City Miss bound. She's already won at the Weber City Misses mile and a 16th. I think she'll be very tough to beat in that spot.
Mac, it's Miss Fulton Gal is a great story, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I want to ask you the same question I asked a minute ago about the private terms of that group. So Peach Tie, Miss Fulton Gal, Some Ride, they're all kind of in the photo at the end. Who are you buying going a mile and a 16th, and who are you selling?
To be honest, I really do think all 3 of them have reason to improve from that. Now, Miss Fulton Gal, I think, was my second choice solely because I wondered if the 1 mile was going to really suit her or if she maybe needed the 2 turns. It was a fun race in that you thought you knew what was happening, and then everything flipped on its head, as John was alluding to. And so for me, Some Ride, she was looming. That was Some Ride. Coming around the far turn. And I thought for stepping up the way that she did, she looked the part physically as well for just a really big, strong horse who's going to improve with the added ground. Maybe she had moved a little bit too soon, or you could make a case for her in that regard. And Peach Tie, the gutsiness, the professionalism was there. She came back to get ahead of Some Ride and then just misses out in a nose. So she's tactical enough, and even though she had a little bit of a hiccup there, I do think she can still improve. It's not something I would write out if she were to try the 2 turns, and that's where you get a very different trip, just with not necessarily having to be on every step of the way through that really long stretch to the second wire.
John, what do you think?
About, well, as I said, I think Miss Fulton Gal is not only the best horse stable locally as far as a mile and a 16th goes, but I wasn't that crazy about anyone else in the Beyond the Wire. I do like the way Peach Tie kind of fought back in the last 8th, but I still don't think she's going to race quite fast enough to really merit how much hype she's getting. Some Ride, as Mackenzie said, made that big move. She's fairly lightly raced. That was either only her 2nd or 3rd career start, so I could easily see her taking a step forward next time out. I think if I had to make the power ranking of who I like coming out of that race, it's Miss Fulton Gal, pretty big gap. Some Ride, very big gap. Everybody else.
Go ahead, Mac.
Interestingly enough, though, Miss Fulton Gal did it with a 62 buyer. So we were sort of saying, there's room for some ride to improve coming into here with the numbers, right? The numbers don't feel super strong to me coming out of this race. So I'll be curious just how they run. To me, I just felt like they were a little bit light. Peach Tie won the 7 furlongs in the wide country with a 72, and then she ran a 61 there. So I'm just sort of curious as to how we might see that change going forward as well.
Have you guys seen the rags or any of those for that for that race, or any of the horses in that race? I'd be curious to see that. I mean, I felt like Peach Tie kind of needed to win that race, given the trip she had, and given that she was, stalking a horse who was going to pack it in pretty early and pretty easily in law school. I really like some ride out of there personally, because she gets no pace to run at. She makes a huge move. She's green, starts fooling around in the lane and gets herself beat. But she looks like the one to me that has the biggest upside going forward. We'll see. We'll see how my predictions work out. Usually not very well, but I also want to touch, guys, on the story behind Peach Tie. It's owned by the family of the late Jimbo Bruscelli. Bruscelli passed away in December. This horse, when he quit training, he went down to Ocala with trainer Mike Gorham and picked this horse out. And this turned out to be the last horse that he picked out. And for good measure, Bruscelli rode Weber City Miss to win the 1980 Black Eyed Susan. So like a really cool, like how it all comes around, comes together, circle kind of story that really is sort of the only in horse racing story.
I was going to say, I was going to say, like, if there's ever a horse of destiny in the Weber City Miss, it will be Miss Fulton Gal for that reason. And I was actually out on the apron for that race watching it kind of in proximity of the ownership group. And they were so pumped when she got up in the last 16. And those kind of reactions and those kind of stories, as you said, are really what the sport's all about.
Yeah.
It is. And I mean, for Miss Fulton Gal and to picture her out at the whole story, I mean, you can't emphasize how special it is and how much horse racing brings people together in that way. But also fillies and mares that Jimbo had the chance to get on. I think that in itself is a whole other story, because he's been a part of some really special ones along the way. And so he certainly knew the type.
Including Ruffian.
Exactly.
That he rode twice, which is not bad. All right. That is the private terms, the Weber City private terms, and the Beyond the Wire. I'll get these right one of these days. Next month, the Tessio for the boys and the Weber City Miss for the girls. There you go. See, I could get it right. All right. One last news story I want to touch on, then we'll do some handicapping. On Sunday, John, you hosted the Maryland Bred and MTHA Awards, and the big one, Horse of the Year, not a big surprise, although it was kind of a bumper crop, but it goes to Mindframe.
And yes, and a very well deserving Horse of the Year at that. Many members of the Johnson family were there. Mike Trombetta, longtime trainer for Larry Johnson, was there. And it does make these stories a lot more real when you actually see the people behind them speaking and not just words on a computer screen. So that was really awesome to see them out there. And as I talked about during the award show, Mindframe kind of represents the apex of Johnson's breeding program. I mean, he has enjoyed lots of success for over 4 decades, but he's never had a horse as good as Mindframe, who we're watching win the Stephen Foster at Churchill Downs. And Mindframe, the phrase "we never got to see his best" has become kind of cliched, but I really don't think we got to see how good Mindframe was. He only raced 9 times. He had a lot of injuries and other strange circumstances get in his way. But in 2025, he was a grade 1 winner around both 1 turn and 2. He beat really an all-star field in the Churchill Downs Stakes, then came back and won a Stephen Foster for his first and what ended up being only grade stakes win around 2 turns. As a 3-year-old, he came in second in the Belmont and the Haskell. Both times, you could tell that he was not quite a finished product, but he just had enough talent that he was still in the mix in both of those spots. He's now standing at Claiborne Farm, following in the footsteps of another Maryland-bred great in Devil's Bag, who also stood there, and another horse we never, I think, quite got to see the best of. So, so it is a amazing story. I could not be any happier for the Johnson family, who also got some awards, with Larry being named Breeder of the Year and Future is Now being named Champion Turf Runner. And I'm really excited. Mindframe's first crop to hit the track in 2029.
So here, go ahead, Mac.
Yeah, I'm echoing the sentiment of him as a stallion. It'll be really curious. And it's nice to see someone who's built such a legacy, both on the track and also with a breeding program, have put together a horse like this, as well as a legacy that really lives on in every sense of it, between his family and preserving all of that, as well as the immediate family with Mindframe. It's still a lively family, and there's a lot more to come in that. So it just has a ton of upside. We're talking about all of these other 3-year-olds, and even though he's one who is off to the breeding shed, I think there's still a lot more that we're going to see from him.
There is. Actually, I had Larry's daughter, Tracy Mulroy, on Tuesday's podcast, and if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll pop up the link to the video in the corner, so check that out. And a couple interesting facts that she let me in on. One, Mindframe's got a full sister who is a yearling now. I had talked to Larry in 24 before the Belmont, and he told me, well, I sort of rushed the dam off to Constitution, squeezed her in on a late cover, and so now they got a yearling full. So that'll be fun to see. Obviously, we've seen the half in Lonesome Road a couple times in Maryland, who's been pretty impressive. The other interesting thing, and John, I think you alluded to this when you announced the award, all of these horses, all of these good Johnson breds stem back to a horse named Rand's Chick, who was a foal of the 70s, and Larry got her and bred her to Parfait Mont. Parfait Mont was Deputed Testimony's entry mate in the 1983 Preakness, and that breeding led to a horse named Special Cal, and then both Mindframe and Futures Now come down out of the Special Cal line. Special Cal was named for Larry's other daughter, Kelly Caraballo. So that part I didn't know. There was also a Special Trace named for Tracy now Mulroy. Special Trace was graded stakes place. So pretty fun stuff there. And man, as you said, John, that horse was good. And after we just showed the Stephen Foster, after that he lost his rider coming out of the gate at Saratoga, didn't really race for a bunch of months, then ran 5th in the Breeders' Cup Classic. There's a certain might have been quality to this horse. But all right, guys, mandatory payouts on Sunday.
We're ready. I think we've done our homework.
That's good, because I didn't. So at least one of us or two of us have. All right, I will disappear. You guys do your thing, and I'll return at the end. Mandatory payouts in all wagers, including the wager that I would never play without a mandatory payout, the jackpot pick 6. But they got to pay it out.
I actually feel that way about the Super High Five. Every now and then I'll play around with it, but I've played it a few times, or rather I missed out once on the Super High Five on a mandatory payout, and I thought, well, I was crazy. Today was the day of all days, and I think I would have been pretty close, or maybe had it if I had played it. So ever since then, it's a good day to try something new.
All right, good luck. I'll look forward to hearing what you guys have to say.
All right, so instead of the pick 5, we'll start early and go with this Chesapeake pick 6. We have over $25,000 into the carryover coming into Friday. I find it hard to imagine we don't bring that and a little bit more into Sunday's card. Fingers crossed. And also, really great race that it starts off in Sunday's race 3, a mile and a 16th for the 3-year-olds, maiden special weight event. You could try and single here. I go ahead and try to use a few different horses. Johns, how's your approach?
Well, I think number 3, Sir George, is going to be a single on many tickets, and he deserves to be a single because I think he is strictly the one to beat. Watching him here in his 2-start back race here at Laurel Park on February 6th, in his debut at Delaware in September, he came in second to Big Cuddle, who came back to win a Maryland Million Nursery. So George went to the sidelines after that. This is his first start since then. It was a pretty salty field on paper, and he's running a pretty big race. He's stalking the pace in the red cap, white silks, and he's making what would 9 times out of 10 be a winning move. But you can see Taj Mahal making his move as well in the 4 path, and Taj Mahal is going to absolutely eat him up. Of course, Taj Mahal's form was validated when he came back to win the Miracle Wood just 2 weeks later. So take Taj Mahal out of the mix. Let's kind of pretend he's not there. And suddenly, Sir George's race looks a lot better. He's wearing down the early leader. He's going to end up finishing 2 1/4 lengths clear of the others. Pont Avon, who came in 3rd in that race, came back to break his maiden in impressive gate-to-wire style a few weeks later. And considering it was his first race in so long, I thought it was a very professional effort by Sir George. He shipped down to Colonial Downs on the Virginia Derby Day undercard for his next start, ran into a pretty tough field. The winner, who I believe was a Brad Cox trained runner, yes it was, he won by 19.5 lengths. He absolutely freaked. As such, Sir George really didn't have much of a chance to beat him, but I think coming back to his home base is going to help Sir George's cause. That being said, I know you had mentioned you might take some shots against him. I'm curious to see who you want to do that with.
Look, and it's a race where I do think he has every reason to keep improving. Michelle Nehigh, though, I'm a little bit intrigued with the horse she has in Prime Ranger. Now, it's a horse who has a solid work tab. Looks like they've been doing as much as they can over the winter. The pedigree jumps out to you in that he really is bred for distance. Out of the Medaglia d'Oro mare by Justify, the mare was a good quality runner, going long on the turf, and seemed to be able to handle the dirt. But as far as half siblings go, they've really stretched out and been ones who look for distance. It's not very often you see a first-time starter who you see all of the pedigree that says they just need more ground, who has bullet works the way that this one does. Training up at Fair Hill, so smaller sampling size, but comes in with some 5 furlong and 4 furlong works, and then most recently, bullet going 3/8. And so that's where I just wonder, lands a little bit towards the outside of the sort of odds-on types. Maybe you can justify, quite literally, taking a little bit of shot with this one.
I want to note also that it's small sample size, but since last September, Nehigh is 4 for 7 with her Laurel starters, 6 of 7 in the money, and she sent out a first-time starter winner here a few weeks ago in Time for America, who ran just a gigantic race from last place. So I am interested to see in how Prime Ranger does. I don't have him in my top 4 at this time. That might change, but based on the way you're talking about him, it would not be a surprise if he ran big at first asking.
I agree. Now, Call Me Victorious. I don't know if we're going to get a huge price on this one, but blinkers go on, Hazelwood on. I think we probably need to make a stat for Hazelwood on. And Phil Capuano brings this one out first after the claim. He looked fantastic in the paddock to me. I thought he made a nice challenge from out wide. The winner was just 2 steps ahead of him, but this is a horse who kept improving through the lane, going the 7 furlongs. Maybe he shows a little bit more tactical ability here, going the 2 turns, and could really appreciate that change in pace. Is he one who you use in the mix?
Yes, I do. I I picked him third in my analysis. As you mentioned, he's been taking big steps forward in each of his career starts. Phil Capuano, a sneaky good 23% off the claim. He doesn't have a big bone, but the ones he does send out do a lot of damage. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I know he closed well going 7 furlongs last time out, but I'm not quite sure if his pedigree necessarily suggests that he'll want to go 2 turns. He's by Dialed In, who's been standing at stud for over a decade, and his average winning distance is still only 6.5 furlongs. So it wouldn't be a shock if he just completely spit the bit and finished up the track, but it also wouldn't be a shock if Blinkers, Hazelwood, and a new bone made the winning difference. So I think if he is a very good value horse, I think, if you want to try and beat Sir George.
I agree. Now we'll see about the value just with the Hazelwood factor, certainly demanding a bit. But race number 4 is the start of that late pick 5. And it's an allowance here going 1 mile and a 16th as well. I also found this to be a somewhat interesting race as far as handicapping goes. I could make a few different cases. How do you take it?
So I picked number 4, Joe the Jet, on top with Hazelwood up. I really liked each of his last 2 starts. He set off the pace and won going away at 1 mile last time out, beating, among others, Nescott winner Straight to Water. He chased Badge of War in his last start, going 1 mile and an 8, stretching out around 2 turns for the first time in a long time. I mean, Badge of War ran a huge race on the lead, so I don't want to take anything away from him, but Joe the Jet gave him a decent fight, ended up a clear-cut second. Think he gets another nice setup here. The really interesting horse to me is number 1, Tony Eclipse for Brittany Russell. He won the Maryland Juvenile as a 2-year-old, had a nightmarish trip in the Spectacular Bid. Might have gotten hurt in the private turns because he didn't race for the rest of his 3-year-old season. He took a step forward, second off the 10-month layoff last time out, battled for the early lead through contested fractions, ended up hanging on for 3rd. On one hand, his late pace figures over the past 14 months or so have not been that good. On the other hand, you know, as I said, he's going 3rd off the bench, and there's really not that much other speed in here, or at least no speed who can give him a really hard time. So, I mean, it would not shock me at all if he just got loose and just kept on going.
Look, and that could work for him going 1 mile and a 16th here. I wonder a little bit, it feels like half of the field kind of wants the same trip. They want to be forward, close to it. But I'm not entirely sure who's going, how that shapes up if we end up with them just sort of trying to fight against each other on the front. That's the pace scenario is a little bit of a question mark for me. Derbiness certainly could present some speed if we get that one in here, but I'm with you on Tony Eclipse. He ran well enough first off the bench with Lonesome Road, just draw a line through it almost. And then he comes back and Hard as Life, I believe, was also a Michelle Knee-High horse, and Badge of War, who we were talking about with Joe the Jet, career best form. He was kind of a single for me in his next outing because I thought it was just such a strong race. And so for Tony Eclipse finishing 3rd, I might just kind of keep going off of that race and really key around him in there. I have to ask you about one horse who comes in. He was purchased in the digital sale in January. Raduzzi, hold on. Let me make sure. Raduzzi, I think, is anyhow. This one's a half to Drake's Passage, or I stand corrected. I think is a full to Drake's Passage. Certainly wants the distance, but we saw a big step up last time. Colonial number 82. Maybe we take it with a grain of salt, but he seems to be running the right kind of race. Is it 2 turns going to help him here?
It's possible, and I think he merits a lot of respect. I mean, he was the definition of a chronic maiden last year at Aqueduct. He loved coming in second, and then kind of the same figure every time, at least on the Brisnet scale, then jumped up, and as you mentioned, one going away at Colonial Downs last time out. Now he's trying winners for the first time. As he mentioned, the pace could get hot. I know that Tony Eclipse has the best early pace figures in the field, so I think if anyone is going to get loose, it's going to be him. But there are a lot of horses who do have good tactical speed and could try to make things mildly interesting on the front end. If it ends up being a really hot pace, then Redoughty, I think it's how you pronounce it. I should have gone back and looked at Travis Stone's call because he's usually correct, but I digress. But it would set up for him, and I think if you get a half in I don't know, say sub 47-3, and you have the 2 on your ticket, you'd be feeling pretty good.
Right. It'll be curious what kind of price we end up getting with him, but Schwann piloted him for that win last out. So, yeah, maybe a horse who has a little upside here. First time against winners, you have to demand some value in this group. Tony Eclipse, though, does look like he might finally get his day. Now, race number 5, we shorten things up to the 6 furlong distance for the starter optional. This race and race 6, a little bit of head scratchers for me. How do you go in here?
So race 5 is kind of tough because there's so much speed and so many horses who really can't last after getting pressed in the pace. Like there's so many horses who are at least on the business scale all early mid-pace figures in the 90s, and then they all kind of slow down late. I mean, the most dangerous speed is probably number 2, Curtis K, who battled on the lead, one going away, was claimed out of that race by Jamie Ness. But that was the best race that he had run in a really, really long time. So I don't quite know if he'll be able to duplicate it. My possibly crazy thought in here is number 4, Forest City for Lacey Gaudet, who has not raced in a very long time. I liked his last 2 starts of the 2025 season. Came from off of very modest tractions, one going a mile and a 16th last March 29th. Then ran well at Pimlico first off the Gaudet claim, ended up second behind the very classy Mr. Jefferson. Went to the sidelines. Not long after that, came back to the work tab in mid-January, and now is here. Now, I don't know if he's going to be at 100% off that longer layoff, but I do know that the pace is likely going to be hot, and he has a great closing kick, so it could just fall in his lap.
This is true. Now, it's interesting because we saw him pretty much a career sprinter up until Lacey claimed this one, and then she just goes ahead and keeps running him long. Now, she claimed him out of a race going a mile and a 16th, I should say. So it's just sort of curious to me what distance this horse wants. He's by Munnings. Maybe he really does just have the ability to kind of do it all. There's a horse I have to ask you about in here named Heldish. He has some back class. He's held the right company. What do you make of this horse? Because he lost the rider 2 back, but he actually ran a pretty good race on that particular day. And I didn't necessarily love the trip last time out. Could the 6 furlongs and inside speed set things up for him?
I mean, he was highly thought enough as a 2-year-old that he was bought for $160,000 at Fasig-Tipton. Hasn't quite lived up to that hype since then, but he's had a few setbacks. As you said, he did not have a great trip last time out in a pretty similar field. He unseated Jockey 2 starts back, and those were his first starts off a long layoff, which in turn were his first starts off a 16-month break. So I do think there's a very, very good horse in there somewhere, and he is in kind of a similar boat as Forest City in that if he gets paid, he's going to be tough to hold off.
Right. To be honest, I didn't have him on my ticket when he unseated the rider in that 2 back, and I was thinking to myself, I'm not glad, but I thought he looked really good going around. So it was sort of like, okay, I have to remember this feeling because I don't want to miss him next time out. Right. Maybe it's an every other type of thing. So he's one who demand a little bit of value depending on how you're playing it. But if you want to spread out here, I don't think it's wrong to include him in those late sequences. Now, race number 6, equally a head scratcher for me, the claiming 12-5 non-winners of 2 in life. Going 6 furlongs for the girls. You could go a lot of different ways in here. Who do you see as the main speed, though?
Well, this is also a mandatory payout race of the Jackpot Super High 5. If you want my wagering strategy on it, my advice would be don't. There's really not a ton of speed in here. I mean, number 7 Maidstone, who is also my top pick, is probably the closest thing. She showed a lot of speed going a mile 2 starts back, led almost the whole way, ended up second behind Weekend Wife, who saved every inch of ground, while Maidstone raced off the rail most of the way. Tried to come from off the pace last time out, ended up missing by a neck to the odds-on choice in Bucking Right. If she wants to if she wants to sit off the pace here, the 4 Over My Sense and the 5 APM Notion have some early foot. APM Notion is almost surely going to back up, and Over My Sense doesn't like hanging around much either. Number 6, Julie Bell, is a little bit interesting. She showed absolutely nothing in her first 2 career starts here, went over to Charlestown and broke her maiden in gate to wire style. She might be sent also, but I think any way that you slice it, Maidstone is going to be both close to the early pace and the one to beat.
And we had seen her entered for some much tougher spots as well in recent weeks. So getting down here to this level, I do think maybe that's something that's attractive. I like Over My Sense. Seems like a filly who runs a little bit better with these inner posts that we've seen. She's also one who has found a lot of trouble in some starts. And so maybe I just think at this level, she can kind of continue building some confidence. And when she runs a good race, it's a pretty good race. She maybe has a little bit of upside there. She should be a fair price as well. Have to ask you though, the number 1, Aeronix, blinkers go back on for this one. And Sarah White sticks around the level. Hazelwood gets on here. Had a trouble last time out. We saw a really good race in the 3-back maiden win. Are we just sort of fine tuning here?
I don't quite know, because she had an awful break 2 starts back and ran what I thought was a really good race, in that she made a big move, but just the bad start kind of did her in. And I even said in the handicapping guide, watch her for next time. And then she came back next time. She had another bad break, and she ended up finishing up the track again. So she is drawn towards the inside, does get Hazelwood up for the first time, or at least he's listed, and adds blinkers. I don't want to abandon ship on her now, especially considering she's going to be, I think, a much better price than she was in either of her last 2 starts. And as you said, that maiden win was impressive enough to make me believe that there's a decent filly in there somewhere, but I just can't guarantee that she won't get into trouble again and break my heart again.
Exactly. The inside post in a big field certainly gives you a little bit of reason to try and demand value. Just a question of whether or not we get it there. Jackpot Super High 5, it's a mandatory payout. Maybe you just pick the first 3 and it pays for the first 3. Hopefully you could get lucky. It feels a little bit wide open to me, and that a lot of them could really jump up and improve. But how do you play it as far as the pick 5 and that pick 6 go?
So I don't know if you can quite single in a field like this. So I will end up using Maidstone, possibly Aeronix. One long shot I kind of like is one who's going to be coming from off the pace. That's number 8, Paperback Edition, who made her first start off a very long layoff last time out. Made a bit of late ground, ended up being beaten by 5 and a quarter lengths. Ran some, relatively speaking, decent races before going on the sidelines over the summer. It would not surprise me if she took a big step forward second time off the layoff.
Exactly. I wouldn't disagree with you there. It's a great angle, especially in this type of a group. So options galore here in race 6. Race 7 is another one going 6 furlongs here for the girls. This is a 3-year-old group for this allowance. A lot of speed in here, though, and the 6 furlongs could make a big difference for a bunch of these in here. So honest pace, do you go ahead and go with one of the closers?
Yes, and that closer is a filly who was a Maryland-bred finalist, and one who I've talked about on this podcast a little bit. She's finally set for her 3-year-old debut, and that is number 7, Superstitious. Her signature win of last season came in the Maryland Million Lassie, where she took advantage of a similarly fast pace and won by a neck. ran okay in her next 2 starts, came in second in the Maryland Juvenile Filly, then was third in the Gin Talking, as now we are reliving Maryland Lassie. And it was kind of a statement race for her. She had broken her maiden on opening day at Colonial Downs in very impressive fashion, swooped the field and won by 8 3/4 lengths. We ran a huge second, had just filtered in the Keswick, but then lost to her again in the Dolly Madison on the grass. So this was kind of a prove-it spot for her to see if she could finally get over the hump. You can see that she sat about 3 lengths off the pace, kicked on in the 3-path. Really, the only serious late challenge was Doc's Miracle, who got a very ground-saving trip compared to Superstitious, gave her all she could handle, but Superstitious does get the upper hand. She came back to the work tab in late February, has been slowly ramping up her morning drills for Robbie Bales, including back-to-back 6 furlong workouts on March 15th and March 22nd. I don't know if she'll have time for the Weber City Miss, even if she runs well here, but I do think she'll make some noise later in the season. I also don't quite know if 6 furlongs is exactly her speed, her Maryland Million Lassie win notwithstanding. Those workouts kind of suggest to me that they have longer targets in mind. But as you said, there is a lot of pace in here. Honor Roll to her direct inside has speed. So does Juniper's Jubilee. So does Tacit Value. So does Quad. So does pretty much everybody else. Superstitious is the only one who has proven that she can come from off the pace and run well. So I think she's going to be very tough to beat. And she is my best bet of this pick 6 sequence.
I agree. Now, I wonder a little bit with her coming back in, really maybe those longer works are just sort of to give her the fitness rather than targeting longer options. But I think it'll all be sort of told once we find out the results in race 7 on Sunday. Now, another one who could end up proving to be a closer, could be overlooked as well. Our Golden Gator comes in for Michael Moore. Matthew Groff, owner breeder, actually has a fun fact, has a few steeplechase horses as well. So this one won on debut going the 3/4, coming in off the pace, and then stretched out to the 7 furlongs, tried the mile and a 16th over a wet track last out. The numbers for me, if the debut 64 buyer certainly could work in here and might benefit from the outer post if there's plenty of pace unfolding up front.
So I don't think that she can outkick Superstitious because outside of her maiden win, she really hasn't had much late punch in her last 2 starts. But I think the pace just being as hot as it's going to be, I think a lot of the early speeds are about to get burned up, and that will lead to our Golden Gator getting second behind the open length winner, Superstitious. So if you really want to try to make money here playing this vertically, because I do think Superstitious is going to be a big favorite, I think a 7-8 Cold Exacta might be the way to go.
Right. I think that's a great point. Now, if plenty of other speed, you really could go ahead. I just worry they're all going to be piled on top of each other in sort of a who holds out. Honor Roll is another one who comes in for service. If we were going 5.5, I think this is a horse I'd put on top, but the 6 furlongs makes me just a little bit suspicious. Second time Lasix though, maybe that moves things forward, getting back over to the dirt as well. Any thoughts there?
I mean, she has the most speed of anyone in this field. So if anybody does wind up setting a clear lead, it's most likely going to be her. I mean, she ran big races on the lead twice against winners last winter, or last fall rather, both here and at Parks. Shipped out Turfway, as you mentioned, for her 3-year-old debut. Got caught up in a fast pace, ended up well beaten. These look like easier rivals than the ones that she saw there. Outside post doesn't do her many favors, so you got to figure Abner Adorno is just going to gun her as fast as he possibly can. And if he ends up clearing to the front from the outside post, and if Superstitious isn't quite up to par in her first start off a 3-month break, it could be Honor Roll's day.
It's true. Interesting race here in race 7, but very good quality group for these 3-year-olds. We wrap it up in race number 8, maiden 25 for the 3-year-olds. Now we're going 5.5 here, and we have a lot of different ways you could go. I kind of look to the number 3 just on pedigree alone, but I don't know. Are people going to try and single the first-time starter in the last leg?
I mean, I've seen enough Brittany Russell horses who debut in spots that initially look way too low for them. Like, why would you put this horse in a maiden 25 when he sold for 775, has a great pedigree, and he's been gelded. But, the rest of the field might be that, shall we say, not good, that even if he has any ability at all, he's going to win. I think among the horses with experience, number 4, Rebel Prince is my top choice. He really woke up in his last start at Colonial Downs, battled on the pace, ended up second. It was his best race in a very long time. I think he'll take a step forward here, second off the brief break, and is the biggest challenge to the big first-time starter.
I completely agree with you there. And I actually watched that race at Colonial and really liked what we saw. So third time Lasix now, and third time blinkers as well. Things just really seem to have come together for him. He gets back over to a fast track, and he was facing pretty strong company in that 3-back as well here. So just a very different group. Class relief kind of goes a long way, and we seem to be going in the right direction. El Papacito should show a bit of early speed. Now, hasn't necessarily been able to sustain going the 5.5, but 2-back was up against it with Layson, who came back to win as well. So maybe sticking around this level could go ahead and benefit here with the inside speed, maybe gets him off and running a little bit sooner. But overall, how do you play the last leg?
So I do think Clavin is going to be used on every single ticket pretty much, and possibly even tickets that don't exist. So if you want to make a really big score, I would not use him. I would use Rebel Prince, the aforementioned El Papacito, and one horse who I know is going to be a huge price, but I have to bring him up. That's the one Quain, who had just a terrible break first time out. Fell way behind the others and really had no chance to catch up from there. But he did make up a sneaky amount of late ground. Ran a very decent late pace figure, now adds blinkers. He's been gelded since. He gets first-time Lasix. If he breaks cleanly this time, I mean, crazier things have happened. And he would be a huge separator in any pick 6 play.
I agree with you. And I actually have notes on him because he was sort of rearing and fussy in the gate and first-time starter. Now, I'm a big fan of second and third-time gelding, just especially with a shorter turnaround. But, it's not out of the question to me that he has every reason to improve in second asking. And I think he could be really overlooked out of a more than ready mare by Irish Warcry. Certainly fits well enough here for this group. Fun sequence, though, for this mandatory payout, but plenty of ways to go, and hopefully we've maybe offered a little bit of value in this group. We'll see if Frank has been able to get his second coffee in.
That's what I forgot to do. I forgot to get my second cup of coffee. My Charlestown HPPA mug is saying, fill me up, fill me up. So,
well, it's almost iced tea season here.
That's true. That's true. We're getting there. We're getting there. So, yeah, interesting sequence. Thanks, guys, for putting all that together. As you said, mandatory payouts in the pick 6, pick 5, pick 4. Everything's got to go. Everything must go. So, we'll look forward to seeing where those opportunities come out. Appreciate you guys doing this. Everybody, please do like and subscribe. As I said at the beginning, we're on all the podcast places, Podbean, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Likes and subscribes help us out. YouTube, of course. John and Mackenzie will do this again in a week. We got a bunch of stakes coming up next weekend. We'll have an interview next Tuesday on Maryland Racing Today. Maryland Racing Today, powered by the Racing Biz, racingbiz.com. is presented by our friends at the Maryland Jockey Club. Mac, John, any final thoughts as we're out the door?
No, I'm listening to you say like and subscribe, and I'm wanting to throw in. Frank does do autographs if people are interested. So
here's a story. Years ago, in a different life, in a different job, I was flying somewhere, and I was running a nonprofit organization. I was sitting next to somebody on a plane, and I had some of our materials out because I was reviewing something. And the woman next to me said, "Oh, that event! I love that event." And I said, "Oh," and I introduced myself, and her eyes got real wide. She goes, "Oh, you're Frank?" So that was my one moment of celebrity. There you go.
see, he does autographs.
Sure.
Wait,
Matt,
people-
I'll save one for you.
People might say that at the track now, only in a slightly less complimentary tone.
Very much less complimentary tone. Like you're. Anyway. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll catch you next week.
Take care.
Have a good one.